Hey, welcome to this episode of Meet the Gaffer. But this time's going to be a little different. I'm Robert Barcelona, and you're going to meet the crane guy. So this is my wall of shame. These are some of the shows I've worked on. We, upon occasion, get issued badges, not on every show. Some of them, I did Celebrity Apprentice. I did the first season of X Factor on the road. I didn't do the stage. The Voice, I did a few seasons of The Voice on the reality side, never on the stage. Two different crews altogether. A bunch of corporate stuff in here. Emeril Lagasse when he was on Food Network. Some pay-per-views, comedy shows, concerts. There's Jewel. I got Paul McCartney's last concert at Candlestick. That was fun. The Do Tour, some sports, some NBC stuff. Warriors Champs right there, baby. Warriors Champs. I did their rally over in Oakland at the Plaza. It was fun. I love doing the jib. I think I'm good at it. Took me a long time to get good at it. I messed up a lot of other people's shoots because I wasn't good at it for a while. But at this point, I just have fun. And if they want to lock the jib off, I lock it off. And if they want to fly around, let me do cool stuff, I do. And I'm a goofball. And it just is what it is. I do everything. I do weddings with a jib, not many, but I will do a wedding with the jib, and I will do high-end movie stuff too. But as a crane guy, being that the jib is part of my tool set, that's what I do. So if it's a corporate job that wants to shoot an exterior of their company's facility, or if it's a motion picture or an episodic television show where they want to use a bigger crane, I do all that range. I got hooked up with a company that shot music videos back in the 90s. And every music video that I was the DP on, I knew I was going to have a jib. So I thought, well, if I'm going to have a jib on every job that I do, then I should own one. So I bought my first one. Doing music videos, even at the level at which I was doing them, which, they were like $20,000 to $50,000 music videos. They weren't that big. The music videos I worked on for other production companies were much bigger. I did a couple Hammer music videos back in the day, and some other larger country music videos and things. But for me, it was very small. So to make that transition to be a jib operator only was very easy. And I knew that being on another DP's set, he didn't want to have a DP on his set. He wanted to have a jib operator. And so that's what I was okay doing. I was completely fine with being a jib operator because I would go out, I'd set up my jib, I'd be in my own little world. When it came time to put the camera on the jib, I'd fly it around, and all the other jib guys know this. You're kind of the hero. Oh, that was cool, that was a cool shot. Oh, that was cool, flying over. That was cool. And then I'd pack up my stuff, and the rest of the shoot would keep going, and you could go home. So once my reputation locally in the Bay Area was starting to build as this thing called a jib operator, a lot of the key grips locally knew who I was. Because I was the only freelance jib owner-operator kind of in the Bay Area at the time. There were others. I don't want to minimize the competition that was here. But I kind of targeted my market to the commercial guys. And so a job came up that, oddly enough, Steve Cardellini called me for. And Steve Cardellini said, hey, I've got this job. I believe it was for Folgers. It may have been for Coca-Cola. I don't recall. But he said, hey, I've got this job, and they're coming up, and they're looking for a crane. I said, well, I have a Jimmy jib. What are you guys looking to do? Well, we want to, float over these people and come up and reveal the big thing. And I said, yeah, the jib will definitely do that. I ended up not getting the job because he thought, and nobody really knew what the jib was at the time still in that commercial world. And so I lost that job because they thought that the Jimmy jib couldn't do it. So I thought to myself, you know what? I can't lose jobs because they're bigger jobs because they don't want to use the Jimmy jib. So he was the impetus behind me buying my next crane, which was a Panther Pegasus. Bigger payloads, supported bigger remote heads. You could ride it. It went further than the Jimmy jibs I had, and it was industry standard. People kind of knew what it was, and it allowed me to jump into a bigger market. So thank you, Steve. So the Jimmy jib has a capacity at certain lengths. Obviously, the weight capacity changes, but it used to be rated at 100 pounds on the short versions. Then it was rated at 70 pounds. Stanton Video Services, who make the Jimmy Jibs, the specific brand Jimmy Jib, they actually minimize that payload package to 50 pounds now. I think it's a safety rating thing. But I knew you could do heavier camera packages on there. So when someone would call and say, hey, I did a music video for the Jimi Hendrix Experience. It was a remake of a Jimi Hendrix song that they were doing a music video on. And they wanted to fly a Panavision camera with, 1,000-foot mag. And they were worried that it wasn't going to work. Well, I got myself luckily into that job through the Key Grip, and the Key Grip said, he'll be able to do it, just bring him on, let's give it a shot. It did handle it. There were weight issues that had to be dealt with. When cameras used to run film, the magazines would load on one side and then unload on the other, so the weight would shift. So you had to be conscious of where the weight was shifting, how long the take was, things of that nature. So balancing was an issue, but it could handle the camera packages. So through that, I marketed, luckily I had pictures, you could market to other people, look, it can do this package that you think it can't do. Because the jib was known as a video thing, right? You use them with TV cameras. Yes, you can, but I wanted to prove to people that that's not only what this tool could do. The tool could handle it, it's just the operator or the technician had to be able to understand how to make that package work on the Jimmy Jib. So the Pegasus allowed me to say yes when people would call and say, hey, we need a crane that does 36 foot high. Yes, I have that. What's the payload? Well, in a rideable version, it's 550 pounds, and in a remote version, it's 176 pounds. There's never a question of, oh, well, it can't do this camera package or it can't do that camera package. And it was based on so the wheels-based remote head systems were placed on that crane, which automatically made operators and DPs feel more comfortable because it wasn't joystick operated. So it opened up another client base for me and enabled me to grow that client base as well and still use the Jimmy Jib constantly. The Jimmy Jib actually paid for the Pegasus because the Pegasus was a substantial investment. And the Jimmy Jib, because I was using it, it's definitely the tool that works the most, was paying for the Pegasus while it didn't work. After becoming a little bit more well-known as a jib operator, and obviously the Pegasus had been part of the arsenal as well, I started to target a little bit more into the Los Angeles market. I had met a few camera guys on some reality shows that came through town, and I tried to hook up with them back in LA, and I was lucky enough to get some shows through my contacts that I had done some shows with locally. One of the shows was Celebrity Apprentice with our president, but before he wasn't a president, he was actually a reality show person. Anyway, so I did Celebrity Apprentice through a friend of mine, Eden Gaha, was the executive producer on that show. So he brought me back to New York, and they needed 2 Jimmy Jibs for what we did for that show. So we would have one that was roaming, that did things in the field, and I had one built constantly in the boardroom where all the firings would happen. So I needed 2 Jimmy Jibs, so I bought a second one for that show. Then I realized that when those 2 jibs were being shipped to New York, because I would ship them, production allowed me to bring my own, I had nothing back home to work with. So I had to buy a third one in order to keep working at home while those jibs were being shipped there and back. So I ended up having 3 jibs. I have the Jimmy Jib Lite, which is just a smaller, compact version. It'll still do an 18-foot reach, but the payload's 25 pounds. Then I have a Jimmy Jib 3, which is the original Jimmy Jib. They're circular shaped, and I have 4 of those. Super easy to travel. Most of the jib guys know this, unless you got into the jib market after they stopped making them. But the Jimmy Jib 3s, which is the circle tube, super easy to put together. One tool kind of does the whole thing. Super simple. So I have a few of those. And then the triangles came out, and the triangles allow you to go further because of the triangular pattern. It's a little more rigid for longer lengths. So I can do on my triangle jibs anywhere from a 6-foot reach out to a 40-foot reach. And so they all do different things. They're made by the same manufacturer, different models, and they allow me to do different things with those jibs. Jib guy goes out, sets up the jib, operates the remote head and the jib arm. These are the controls that the Jimmy Jib has. And again, people operate them differently. They come in different configurations. This is just how I run mine. Joystick operates left and right, up and down, depending on how you configure that. And then on this controller, there's your zoom in this hand, and right under your finger is focus. And so that lives. So we do everything. There are some jobs that I go out, commercial work, where the AC will ride focus because they have their fizz unit that controls focus. And so we don't have to concentrate on that. We're really just doing the thing. On the Pegasus, and even the larger crane that I have, it takes way more people. So the Pegasus, one guy can't even build it. It's just too big. So it takes two guys to build it. Usually a tech, I'll go out as a crane tech for that, and it's usually me and a grip, and maybe two grips. So we assemble the crane. Then we put on a remote head. That remote head is wheels based. So the remote head has to have an operator and a second technician. So that second technician is only responsible for the remote head. The operator operates the wheels and the AC does the fizz work. So now we're looking at sometimes two guys to swing the crane, a remote head technician, the operator, and an AC. So you're looking at, that looks like 6, but it's really only 5. There's 5 guys that would run the Pegasus, and sometimes 4, to make that work. Whereas the Jimmy Jib takes 1 guy. And so the Jimmy Jib is a much different unit altogether. And I hate saying it, but sometimes is the better option than the bigger cranes, but it's not what clients want. And so the Pegasus is available for them. So I was in business for a while. I had multiple Jimmy Jibs. I had the Panther Pegasus. I ended up buying a remote head for the Pegasus at the time. I bought a Power Pod, which was an older style remote head, pan and tilt, with a 3rd axis, because I went back over my rentals after a few years and realized, you know what, most people aren't riding a crane anymore. They're actually doing remote heads, and so I needed to get one as part of my arsenal. After a while of doing that, I always told myself I wanted a techno crane. I just thought they were cool. A crane that telescopes, how cool is that? At the time, you couldn't buy one. But I kept my fingers in the environment to figure out if there was an opportunity that would ever arise where I could buy one. And luckily there was an opportunity that came about, and I was able to purchase my techno crane. I did it because it was the next logical step in the crane progression. I had fixed arm cranes, and I didn't have anything that telescoped, which is kind of what everybody's doing now. It saves time on production. You can skate across the ground, not see the dolly track when you retract straight back. I mean, I don't have to expound on the virtues of having a telescoping crane. It was just something I wanted, and so I was able to pick one up and I put it in my arsenal. So when you have a fixed arm crane, there's an arc in that crane, in a movement. It's just like you putting your arm out. If your talent is in front of your arm here, when you arm out to the left, you're extremely far away from them. And when you arm in, you're close. And when you arm back out, you're far away from them again. Well, if you wanted to start over here and keep that line to your talent all the way across, you would either need to put your fixed arm crane on track and track in and out as you came across, or you could use a telescopic crane, which you would extend the arm. As you got closer to your talent, you would retract, and as you got further away, you would extend again. And it keeps that line and takes the arc out, which directors sometimes want. They don't want to see the arc. It does many other things too. Car commercials are super simple now. When you get a car and they want to go from the front of the car to the back, instead of having to push the crane around, you just retract if you don't have a dolly on set. It enables you to do so many more things. I've actually used it on some corporate shows, live corporate shows, and you can just get into places that you couldn't with a fixed arm crane. If your audience is like 6 feet away from you, well, if you retract to a minimum of 8 feet, but your chassis is further enough away, you can get those people that are 8 feet away from you now, but you can also extend all the way down that row 30 feet if you have a 30-foot techno crane like I do, and you can retract and expand like you were on a dolly. Or you can come around and go down this aisle with the extension and retraction. You can't do that with a fixed arm crane like a Jimmy Jib. You fly over the audience. Everybody's seen the concerts where the jib is flying over the audience and heading to the stage. You have zoom, and you can hide a lot of that arc through the zoom, but eventually you're going to arc away. And so the techno crane allows you to minimize that arc. So recently, I was looking for something else, some other camera movement thing. Camera movement is cool to me. I found this thing called a cable cam. It's not a true pendant system. Pendant systems are what you see at the football game, right? They drop down, they work in a computer-aided box, and you know, those things are cool, very cool. Super expensive, time-consuming to rig, but I thought, you know, my commercial clients might use something like that. I just liked what it did. I thought it was a cool tool. So recently I picked up a fly line cable cam. It's a zip line system, super easy to rig, 2 points, up to 650 feet. The trolley lives on the line. It's all remote controlled. Underneath you can put on a Ronin or a Movi or any kind of gimbal and zip down that line at up to 45 miles per hour. I've done a few things with it that I can't show because they're proprietary. And clients had me sign an NDA. There are a couple things that I have shown. I did a football game. Another fly line operator called me because they wanted to do 2 for this high school football game that a major recruit player was coming out of high school. And so we did 2 fly lines for the football game. Lots of fun. I did a job where they did a 60-foot run on track through the forest. They did it on a dolly. They had an offset for the camera, and it was a nightmare. The grips were trying to trudge at a high speed going through the forest, and they were trying to keep the camera somewhat steady. It was a mess, and I thought to myself, and I marketed it to them after, but we could have done it very simply on the cable cam. You rig 2 points, you put the cable, it was just chasing somebody through the forest. And so that's where I'm headed a little bit more towards now. Still love Jimmy Jibs, Technocrane, Pegasus, all still going to be what I do. The cable cam is just something new that I'd like to start to offer. The big thing now, people always ask me, how do drones affect my business? They don't really. Drones are another piece of the production puzzle. Steadicam is another piece of the production puzzle. Ask a Steadicam guy, how do cranes affect your job? Well, they don't. I can't walk through a crowd and spin 360 and continue up and go upstairs. The Technocrane can't do that. We can fly over, we can go through the middle, but we can't do what a Steadicam does. That being said, the only way you can get a Steadicam up, we used to do Steadicam step-offs from the Pegasus all the time. Steadicam jumps onto the crane, we go up, he comes back down, he walks away. So they're integrated, just like drones. I can't go higher than 36 feet on my cranes. There are cranes that will. There are Technocranes that they have a 100-footer now. They have 70-footers, 50-footers. So there are cranes that can go relatively high. We can't go like that. We can't drop down in a straight line. Neither can my cable cam. We can't buzz back. Drones are their own thing. They're just a piece of the production puzzle.